Oh, hi everybody. This might in fact be the last section of this. We finished the program in the last video. All the pieces are working. So today we have to finish our documentation. We have to create a video to submit to the IB and get all those pieces wrapped up. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is if we actually look at our project. Okay, we want to make sure it's all documented because I want to point out what we were really going to be doing here in section C here. In this section C section that we're talking about here, we're going to be marking from the code, but I suggest a written section. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to create a bit of a written section showing off snippets of code of all the high-level concepts, so a chance to show off code stuff. Okay, so it's going to be twofold. We're going to be going through our code to just sort of finalize it and creating some snippets of important things that we can highlight in our code itself. So I'm going to take this opportunity to say open up one of my written sections, section A, and I'm going to save it so that I can make a copy of it. It's now a section C. Okay, so I have a section A, and I'll have a section C as well. So just get that ready. This will be my section C. It's going to be about code complexity, right? Or so I'm going to put that there. This is code complexity of tools, and I'm kind of again using their marking scheme as a bit of a guide for this, right? So the idea is, and we'll just sort of go down here and show you, what we want in the marking is what's highlighted here, is we want to see appropriate use of tools. Those would be programming tools, appropriate. Not some use, but appropriate use. And then the techniques that I use. There is some attempt to explain the techniques, or the techniques are adequate. So we want to make sure we get that implanted in the marker's mind, right, as they go into our section C. Tools and, what was the word again? And techniques. So I'm implanting that in my marker's mind, that the code complexity of the tools and techniques. And I'll start with a little bit of write-up, and then I'm going to make a list. As outlined in section A, or sorry, section B, both in what I'm looking for is in the, well, let's take a look at our section B. Our record of tasks, so we outline it in the record of tasks, and in our design overview, and even in our testing plan, but let's not get overboard. In our record of tasks and design overview, including the UML diagram, the following techniques / tools of code development were employed. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a list of techniques. So I'll make this a numbered list, right? Starting with number 1, and I'm going to pull that back a little bit. So what would be the first thing? So we'll do this as we go through it. And to grab instead of actually grabbing the code, because that'll add to my word count, I'm going to grab screen captures by using the snipping tool. And there are multiple ways you can do screen captures, but this is what I'm going to use. So this is the electronic notes. I don't think there's anything of value in here. It's just got main in it. But we know it goes to data structures, right? So in data structures, this is useful because it makes use of static properties. So that might be a good thing to screen capture. So I'm going to take a little snip of that. So over to the snipping tool. Take a snip of some of these static properties. Okay, and now I can place that over in my section C. Static properties. shared across classes. Paste. And I want to make sure that my marker understands it's an image and not going to account on my, so I'm going to actually put a little border around it. Just I think that would be helpful so that it identifies it as a actual image. Now I'm going to step back. I'm going to actually put multiple classes and packages, otherwise known as namespaces. This is something that I did, okay? So I'm going to add that in because I can actually see that before I even open any of the stuff along the side here with all these different classes and packages. So I think I'm going to take a snip of that too. Here's electronic notes, and these are all the various packages and classes. Actually, before I do this, I think it might be a good opportunity to remove some of the classes that I didn't use, like binary tree. I didn't use binary tree. I didn't use the queue or the stack or the tree node. So I'm going to right click and delete those. They're going to disappear from my project. Now, I don't want to accidentally delete ones that are used or have a dependency on other classes. Obviously, data structure node and notes I used. Okay, I definitely use dialogues and file handler, but I didn't use these other ones. These ones here definitely were not used in this project. So I'm going to take a second to delete those. Cleaning up my project here since it's all done now. The data, that's not actually code. From the tools package, didn't use calculator or images or numbers. Didn't use search, but I did use sort, okay? But I think I'm going to leave search in there just because it looks nice. It matches with sort, even though it's an unused class. It's going to be a little sneaky thing I'm going to leave in there just to, oops, I forgot to delete it. And then here's the other ones, all the other stuff. Now, before I go any further, I want to make sure it still runs. And it looks like I've actually caused an error. So there must be an error somewhere in my project based on that. Now I just want to scan it over. Oh, it's in dialogues. So dialogues was dependent on numbers. So that's a mistake. We shouldn't have got rid of numbers. Oh, no. So numbers needs to be back. Or I can find where it's used in the code, right? So JFile chooser. Well, actually, that can be fixed because that was an imported thing that was commented out. So I can fix that by just bringing that back to life. But where's numbers used? I actually don't see where it's used. So if I actually comment that line out, that might actually be an easier fix. Okay, so then with numbers gone, I can comment that out. Commenting that out causes all kinds of problems with input integer and stuff like that. Okay, so this is going to be more of an issue than just, I think the easier way is to bring it back. I'm just going to pause the video for a second and bring it back. Okay, so I should be back. So that was a mistake. I went and undid back and found that numbers class and kept it around because we actually do need it. So I'm going to keep the numbers class around. We do need the numbers class. But everything else should be okay now. Everything else now having been deleted, I'm going to run this and make sure it does run, and it does, so we're good there. So now I think I will take a screen capture of all these packages, right? So let me bring back the snipping tool. And I'm going to take a new snip of all these nifty packages that are available here. And I'm going to place that into my section C, right? So multiple classes and packages. Once again, I'm going to put that border on the image. Not that this is code or anything, but there's all the multiple classes and packages. Here's all the static properties shared across classes, right? So I'll just continue the numbering where I left off. Why is it back there? I don't know, but let's move it back to the other one. Okay, I'm just making space for these things. Okay, so now we'll go back to examining our code. So that was a good example of static stuff. And we have this cool stuff here. There's a TryCatch block. That's a neat idea, right? So I think I can show evidence of that. So I'm going to put that in there. A TryCatch error trap, right? That would be a nice thing to demonstrate that I've used in this program. So let's take a snip of that. In this method, I used a fancy TryCatch block. And then that is going to go over into my section C right there. Put a border on it like that. All right. What else can I show off? I want to show off all this fancy coding stuff that I've done. So what's next? Well, let's keep going. Okay. So obviously we started with the user interface stuff. So we made a main user interface. Okay. And that's got a source code that goes with it. Not much showing off here. We then shifted it over to the controller class. Now in this class, we've got some neat things like, well, that's interesting. Why did that get messed up like that? Let's fix that up. So in this class, we had a lot of the logic, right? But maybe we should show that example of where connecting properties, right? Connecting classes together. Other than that, it's just some if statements. So there's nothing really that impressive in this class. But what I do think is kind of impressive is this idea of a constructor method connecting properties and parameters. So I think I'm gonna document that. So I'm gonna actually say right here, class constructor method connecting user interface UI view with parameters sent to the controller class. So I think that's a lot there that kind of describes what I was doing with this constructor method. Okay, so let's take a snip of it. Use the snipping tool, take a new snip. Might as well grab the comment too, but let's just grab this cool method here over to section C and paste it in there. Draw a border around it. There we go. That's a neat thing to demonstrate, right? So you can kind of see where I'm going with all this, right? So multiple classes, static properties, TryCatch error traps, class constructor methods. Now I might have to clean this up a little bit when it spills over like it's doing from one to the other. So maybe I gotta make these images a little smaller, right? So that it fits nicely. So a little bit of cleanup time on this, but not a heck of a lot. Let's see, that should hopefully fit. Did it fit now? No. Well, let's back up a little bit here. Let's see where we're at now. Make this a little smaller. There we go. Okay, so now we're cooking. Okay, so what will be the next thing? So, yeah, we did these controllers, and then we did the new note UI, and it has code with it. Not really much to show there. It's the same stuff. And the new note controller, also not much to show there. Okay. Well, I mean, it does have a complex if statement, but that's not really that impressive. Okay. What I do think, though, is then it builds a new note object. So we made our own class, our own note class with properties, encapsulated properties, and actually maybe this is a good opportunity to add that in as a comment here. This is an encapsulated property. Okay, so I got constructors and I got serializable. I got a whole bunch of neat stuff here that I think would be good to show. So let's first of all comment that. So unique class objects with constructors methods and properties. And with the properties, they're both public and encapsulated. Okay, so we have these constructor methods. We have properties, encapsulated, and use of, like it's implementing interfaces. Implemented interfaces. Okay, so let's take a snip of that. So my cool note class with its properties and its constructor method. So I think I'll just grab that and pop that over into there. Draw a border around it, and it's looking good. Okay, what else can I show off? Looking through the notes class, there's a little more in here. Not only do we have a constructor, we actually have these accessor methods and toString and equals as well, and compare to. Those are some impressive things, right? So what I think I'll do is, in order to kind of fit this in, I'm going to collapse some of the commentary just to kind of show that they're all there. So when I take this snip, this is a sneaky little trick, but I can kind of snip that, right? And then I go over and want to keep that commentary expanded out, but I'm going to go over to my section C and put that picture in there, and then I can write what it is, right? So now that I can see the picture. Okay, so I'll say that I had the use of accessor methods overriding equals from the object class and use of a compare to method from the comparable interface. That's why I wrote it. So that's kind of complex, right? So I'm kind of showing that's happening there. And I overrided not only equals, I also overrided toString, right? I overrided equals and toString. And I made an accessor method, getDate. So all of those are demonstrated in the little picture here of what's going on there in number 6. Okay, let's move on. Let's add some more cool stuff. All right, so what else can I show? That was the note class. What about the notes class? So the notes class also implements serializable, which is maybe the opportunity to talk about the file handling, but maybe we'll wait on that. Uses the linked list, also a good opportunity to talk about that, but I'd rather include a picture of those actual classes that we used. Okay, so other than that, we've got some for loops. That's not that impressive. I mean, I guess. Got a big complex if statement and stuff. I mean, it does some cool logic here, but I don't know if it really does anything that impressive that I'd like to show. Right? I mean, I guess in one little swoop here, I can talk about variables, if statements, and loops all right here. So maybe I'll do that right here. This might be an opportunity to kind of sneak that in. Use throughout of fundamental programming concepts like variables, conditional statements, loops, method calls of graphical objects, etc. Okay, so let's take a snip of that, because it kind of covers a lot of that in this picture, right? Like there's the remove all, here's this else if statement. So I think I'll just grab a bunch of this stuff here just to kind of demonstrate a bunch of that. take that over to my section C, paste that guy in there, and put a border around it. Okay, but this was a good trigger now that by doing notes, right? So I've got all 4 of these there. I've got that. I got notes. It made use of my linked list. So maybe I'll bring that in there. The linked list is definitely in there. Okay, and the linked list has a lot of important stuff in it that I can demonstrate, but I'll just maybe grab the beginning of it, the linked list and some of the stuff it does there. You take a snip of that. Linked list with its head and its tail and stuff. That's an important feature. Okay, and I'll document that. Dynamic ADT linked list created in class but uses original code. And by original I mean written by the programmer, by me in this case, and me being the student. So I would have done it in class under the direction of the teacher, but still it's mine, right? That I created my own linked list, okay? And that kind of is a good lead-in for some of the other stuff I'm about to show, right? So yeah, there was a node class. I don't know if there's anything in the node class that I could really show. It's there, but, you know, okay, node class. Data structures, I've already talked about, notes, dialogues. That might be useful, that I used imported libraries to create dialogues, right? Maybe I'll just collapse this guy so I can get a nice snip of all those imports. This might be a good chance to do that. Over to my section C. Paste it in there, put a border around it. Okay, so what am I going to write about with this, right? So with this, shrink some of this down a little bit. Or actually, I'll go the other way. I'll make that bigger. And I'm just going to move this to the next page. I think that'll be easier. Okay, imported graphical and dialogues from Java core and extension libraries. For example, JOption pane used in classes. Good enough. So there we go. So there's a whole bunch of tools and stuff imported. Okay, that shows some pretty complex stuff. The dialogues. File handler. Okay, there's something I wanted to show in file handler. Now as well, we use numbers. I don't think there's anything in numbers I want to show. Numbers was we just found was the class we were dependent on. The search class we didn't actually use, so I'm going to leave it out. But the sort class, we actually use some fancy sorting algorithm. We use the quick sort algorithm. So I think I'm going to show that. I'm going to show the fancy quick sort algorithm there. Okay, with the linked list. That's pretty cool. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to show that quick sort algorithm. And maybe just for this purposes, I'm going to put this one and this one together. So I'm going to shift the order around a little bit here, so that the quick sort of the linked list and the recursive method it calls are put together here in my screen capture when I get to it. So quick sort with recursive quick sort. That's going to look really good. Okay, search I'm not going to deal with. File handler. What am I going to demonstrate in file handler? Well, in file handler, there was some cool code that I use to save stuff to a class or a file, but I also saved it as an object, not just as a bunch of text. So that would be really cool. So I think I'm going to look for that method, the method where I save an object. Save object. There we go. So here's some of that code right there. So that's going to be what I want to show is this save object code. Okay, let's take some snips. So new snip of this save object method. Over to C. Let's write that in. Saving data, generic data, to a permanent file using a generic method. I want to include the word generic a couple times so that also kind of points that cool feature out that I'm using generics. All right, so there it is. Let's make this bigger so that gets pushed down to the next page. There we go, saving generic data to permanent file. And then the other thing we were going to take a snip of was the sorting code. So under sort, we have the sorting code here, so let's take a snip of that. And that should be good. That should be definitely more than enough to demonstrate this. Okay, so there it is. Pop it over into section C. Border around it. Make sure it's on the right page. It's not, so let's just move this down old school to the next page. Okay, so what is this? Sorting methods. Quick sort with a wrapper method and recursion. There we go. There's some more stuff being demonstrated. Some more cool stuff being demonstrated. A sorting method with a wrapper and recursion. Cool. Word count is 185 words. It's not much because it's mostly pictures, right? So there it is. There's a section C, code complexity, multiple packages and classes, and then all the rest of the cool stuff that I've pulled from my code that is demonstrated in this cool thing. Okay, this is a little big for me, so I'm going to make this smaller, see if I can fit that better. Make that quite a bit smaller. Let's see if I can make this one smaller to fit as well. It should be able to fit. There we go. And I can get rid of all these extra spaces. Okay, and then the sorting method stuff. Okay, that looks much better. So there we go. That's going to be my section C. Done. Another written section done. This also sets me up to now create a section a section D. So we'll get to that next. So I'm just going to reopen section A. There's my section A. And I'm going to use this as a save as to save it as now a D, a section D. All right. Section D, save. Section D. And I'm not going to obviously have all this, but I'll just leave that for now. We'll get to section D in a second. There's our section C, all done. We're done with the snipping tool. Here's all our code. And this actually is a good opportunity now for me to take all this code and turn it into something I can add as an appendix, all my code as an appendix. So I'm going to, once again, open these files in order. So file handler, okay. Then I had the main user interface, and I want to open it to code. I had the new note user interface, and I'm going to open it to code. Then the controller classes, main and new note. Okay. I had the data structures, the note, and the notes. Okay. I have, I don't want file handler. Close that. I have to open the one with public static void main. Actually, I'm going to put that one first. There. So that one, public static void main. Actually, let me try this again. Okay, so I want to kind of open them in a certain order. That one, main UI, the new notes UI, but I want those both open to code, not to the designer. The main controller, the new note controller, the data structures, the note, and the notes. Okay, and then some of my add-on classes, the linked list and the node, the dialogues, the file handler, the sort class, and I'm not going to deal with numbers and search, but I'm just going to once again go through all those to make sure they're all open. Linked list, node, data structures, note, notes, electronic notes, dialogues, file handler. Those are pictures, not numbers, not search, but sort. Main controller, main UI, new note controller, new note UI. Yeah, they're all there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these in NetBeans. This is a little NetBeans trick, right? Sort, file handler, dialogues, electronic notes. All this stuff is getting selected. Okay, because now I'm going to go to File Print. And I got to make a few print options here. Uncheck border, uncheck header, uncheck footer. Print as an editor. Let's see if I apply that. Looks pretty good, but I got to bring that zoom down a little bit. Apply that. There we go. That looks pretty good. So that's going to all fit on one page. I think I can actually make it a little bigger. 75 maybe? A little smaller than that. 73? 72. I don't want that red line to cross. That's pretty good. 72. All right. So I'm going to go with that. Well, maybe I can do 73. I'm changing my mind on the fly here. Can I do 74 even? Let's go with 74. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to print this whole thing to a PDF. All my code. I'm just going to pop it onto the desktop for now. Let's call it code. Let it do its thing. I think that's going to be an important thing to include so that, yeah, I know the developer, the marker can look at my code because the project itself will be included. But I like this idea here of including all the code, because all the code is a really nice, and I'm just going to get rid of some of these blank pages. All the code is a really nice way they could just quickly scan through all that code at once. So give me a second here to get rid of some of these blank pages. So it's 140 pages of code. It isn't really, because a lot of them are blank, and a lot of the ones from the designer is not code I wrote. Okay, not to mention the fact I didn't write all that linked list code or all that dialogues code, because it was done for me. That was part of our process you can see in the rest of the videos. But I'm just going to get rid of a bunch of these blank pages. I'm going to hit delete before I get too far into this. Okay, looking pretty good. Next blank page here. So bear with me a second while again, the idea with this video is to simulate what would really happen if we really made an IA. So I wanted to try to do that for you guys and give you all the bits so you can see I can make an IA too. I can go through the exact same process you guys would go through. And I know I would never do that as a teacher, is never assign an assignment without ever doing it myself. So I wanted to video document the process and let you know that you can do an IA in a short amount of time if you've been properly educated in computer science and you have a plan, right? Okay, come on, delete. Okay, a few pages left. Okay, I think that's it. So now we're down to 71 pages. So there we go. 71 pages is the entire internal assessment, which is still a lot of code, right? If you scroll through this, that's a lot of code, but at least it's all there. It's all nicely there for someone to look through should they wish to, right? So if they wish to look through it, they can see everything, all the code. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to include that as an appendix on my IA. So let me just take a second to rename that. Code will be renamed appendix. Okay, so that's going to be my appendix. I know I had originally an appendix, but then we've since included it in our written sections. So now we got to move on to section D. We have section C. It's done. Before we get to section D, I want to back up here for a second. We did A, we did B, we did C, but now I want to go back to D, the video that we have to make. Okay, so here's my tips for the video. You don't have to record your voice, but I'm going to show how you could do that, giving the marker a better idea. Your voice makes it more personal to them so they understand who you are. If something doesn't work in your program, don't show that. I think we've kind of addressed all our bugs potentially. So one sec. Okay, I'm back. So yeah, so if something doesn't work in your program, don't show that, right? Show the pieces that work, okay? And I do suggest you do talk a little about your code to show off, although we just wrote that whole section. I still think that's kind of good to show off a lot of those pieces, not all of them. 2 to 7 minutes, not too long, not too short. The idea with the marker is this is what we want in the marker's mind. They want to say, the product functions well, not partially. We don't want them with that impression. We want them with the impression that your product functions well, which it does. We know that. Expansion modifications of the product are straightforward, or are they just possible? Now, I always thought this was a weird thing to put in this marking section, but how could we modify it? That, I think, as well, will be something we'll just kind of talk about in the video. I'll throw out the word modification to implant that in the marker's mind as they go into to give me a score. That's kind of where I'm at with that video. All right, so how to make a video. So my suggestion for this is there are lots of screen capture software, but you can get one for free if you just go to the website, Screencast-O-Matic. If you've been in my class before, this is the one I recommend for all my computer science courses at the end of the course, because you don't actually have to download or install any software. It does download a little thing that then runs, but basically you can click record for free. So I'm going to get ready to do this by getting my program up, ready to be run. So let's go back to electronic notes. Okay, it's going to be ready for it to run. And then I'm just going to go and let's launch the free recorder. Suggestion, make sure the size would be full screen. If you want a microphone, you'll have to obviously hook one up. You can record the computer audio if necessary. I don't think it is. Maximum time is 15 minutes. Great, because you would never want it to be that long. Pardon me, longer than that. So I think we're ready to go. This is a new feature. I don't really care about that. I actually wonder if I could actually turn that off. I don't know. Let's see. Pause hotkey, webcam, countdown, control bar, yeah. Keyboard on, I don't know. Record, full screen record controls. Who cares? Let's just go with it. All right, so I'm going to record. 3, 2, 1, here we go. Welcome to my internal assessment. My name is Lawrence Walks from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and this is what I did for my internal assessment program for the IB Internal Assessment for Computer Science. I have made an electronic notes program where the user can record notes and it will actively save them. So every time the program starts, their notes are up and ready for them to look at. Here you can see previous notes already entered into the program, where I can select a note and I can click on my option over here, as I presented all these options for my user, to display that selected note. So the user can see the note in its entirety, its title, the date, and the content of the note itself. The program also allows the user to create new notes, which would be the main purpose of the program. So as my user identified when a phone call comes in, so for example, if they were taking an order for, let me just move back to the title. They were making an order for bread, to order bread, and that was happening on April 1st of 2022. And then the supplier has informed me that the order will be late this week. Okay, and then I can click OK. And now that order is in my database, and I can see that. You'll also notice I added a little graphic to make it nicer for the user. That was based on the user's suggestion to do that. And let's take a look at some more functionality of this program. So one thing I can do is I can take an existing note and I can delete it if I need to, okay? I can also, if I need to, search my notes. When I click search, I'm presented with three options. I can search by the title, by the date, or just by text itself. So if I search by title, and let's say I'm searching for the title Zed, when Zed sent me a note, it will now only display the notes with that particular title. Notice as well, some of the features have now been disabled, so I can't accidentally, cause an issue because it was a search. Now, when I want all the notes back, I can click the button to display all the notes again. And now I can search again. This time I'm going to search for any electronic notes that were on April 1st of 2022. So I'm going to search all notes, this time by date. And I'm going to put in April 1st, 2022. And you'll notice there are two notes that both have that date in there. So I now have seen all the notes that are relevant there. I can also search all notes for just text. Now what this will do is we'll search through all the possible text in those notes. So before I do that, I'm just going to cancel this. Notice that has no effect on the program. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that there are a couple of the notes. I'll display this selected note. That's an old note, not that one. Let's say this one. It says this is a test. And I'm going to search for the word test. That's the word I'm going to be searching for. And the reason is it's in a few different notes. This one doesn't have it in it. This one has the word testing incorrectly spelled. Okay, that one doesn't have it in it. But let's make a new note that has the word test in it. This is a testing title. The date, let's just make up a date, June 1st of 1976. And this test of searching is what we're going to be doing because we're going to be looking for that word test. So now I'm going to search all notes by text for the word test. And you'll see both those notes appear because the word test appears somewhere within those two notes. All right, what else can my program do? Well, I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to add a title, Zappy, on December 25th of 2000. Cool stuff. Click OK. I'm going to add one more note. Potatoes, July 4th. 1874. I don't know if that's right. I'm not an American. I should learn American history. Okay. So I got a bunch of notes in there. The next feature I want to demonstrate in my program is sorting. So when you click the sort option, again, you're presented with two options. Sort by date, sort by title. So I'm going to select sort by title and then click OK. And now you'll notice that by title, my list is in alphabetical order. This also works with date, that it will also sort it that way. And you can sort back by title if you want. And it will always sort my notes into their specific orders. All other features remain available. Okay. And now I just want to demonstrate this. When I close down the program and then rerun the program, it was saved to a permanent file. So it saves there for each time. So that's my internal assessment. If you look at my documentation, you'll notice many different interesting data structures are used. Many different pieces of code are used. For example, the note class is a custom class that I made that has overrides for equals and toString and compare to. It implements serializable and comparable. The notes class is a class that uses a linked list privately encapsulated within the class, along with a lot of the features implemented there. You'll notice that I have user interfaces and controller classes all put together. Thank you for looking at my IA. Please read my documentation for further information. Okay, so then the user would have finished their IA video. I'm going to click Done. I'm going to save that video now using, again, this nice feature. It was 6 minutes, 51 seconds. That's kind of a perfect time. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll just save it on my desktop for now. Recording 3 is fine. I'll just call it that for now. I can rename it in a minute. But now the idea again is I wanted to, as that's publishing, to show you that my product functions well. And I didn't mention anything about expansion and stuff, but I think it's pretty straightforward, everything that is going on in there. So that's pretty good. You know what? Let's take a second while that's working to actually add this to our record of tasks. Okay. Since we got a few more, we're done the designing, but let's now move. Let's say this is April 2nd, 2022. Completed any code comments and recorded the video to demonstrate functionality of the solution. Okay, so I think that will be my final entry for this piece of documentation. Let's just do one final update to the word count now. So my final word count for this section is 654 words. Okay. Now I want that also going to be recorded in my section D. Okay. So I know I'm going to write a section D yet. This is all not what I'm going to keep on there. I'm going to just reduce this down to nothing here. So there's going to be parts where I can write it in. I don't know if I'm going to need a list for this, but I'll just keep that there for now. And I'm just going to go down here. So however long this is, I'm going to add a section for total word counts. And I can paste in each section. So my section A was... my section A go? Well, I know my section B is 654, so I'll get to that. $654. Okay, come on, Wux, let's clean this up. All right, so I guess I don't have my section A open. Let's open up section A. All right, so section A, 475 words. So let's add that in there. Section 475 words. All right, I'm back. And, okay, section B was 654 words. Might as well close and save that now. And section C, when we just finished, how did we come up? And the total on that one was 185 words. And then this section, which we have to get right, but let's just leave that. And then we'll have a total word count. Okay, so let's calculate that. All right. So 475 plus 654 plus 185. So we're at 1,314 words. So we're pretty good. 1314. We got section D to write. If you want to actually do the math, we have about 686 words left. That should be more than enough to complete our section D. More than enough to complete this written section D. Okay. We also have all our code in the appendix, but we're looking good. Our total word count is so far looking pretty good. All right. So we have a section D to write, and our internal assessment is done. But that's all I'm going to put into this video for today. We'll finish up the final piece of the video here, or the final video. I thought this would be the final one, but I'm going to wrap this one up right now. The final video I'll record will write the conclusion. It will put everything together into the package that the IB wants for hand-in, and essentially then walk away from this internal assessment. So I look forward to seeing you in my final video as we wrap this up.